All right, so we're live on Facebook today, and I wanted to let everybody know that we decided to have Total Health join us today and talk a little bit about what's happening today with this coronavirus. And we have John and Tony with us today. And,
Hey.
yeah, thanks for joining us today. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, the things that people are probably experiencing. For myself, I have experienced quite a bit of anxiety and frustration and just, not knowing what to do. And I'm finding that the more that I do something, I feel better than doing nothing. But I have a group that meets every Thursday morning, and we were chatting this morning a little bit about how either we're eating too much or we don't know what to do because we're used to running so fast. So you guys want to talk a little bit about what's happening today and our businesses maybe being stopped, not going to the level that we're used to going, and some recommendations that you might have?
Yes.
Sure. Go ahead, I'll let Tony start.
Hey, sorry. First time doing this, so hopefully, hi everybody. Thanks again, Tori, for getting this going. I think the first thing, we talked a little bit earlier about, the loss and kind of the death of what we have known. So I think a lot of people are probably experiencing a lot of different things that are involved in the grief process. And I think that would explain some of the things that we're choosing to do outside of that. So, looking at what we were so used to, we had our routine, we knew what we needed to do. There was kind of this purpose in our life, going to work. And now it's like, what is happening? I can't move, I can't do anything. I think it's causing us to eat more and not recognize that we're less active. And of course, the comfort food's going to come in around at that time too. So, we're going to talk around that. John and I are kind of probably going to go back and forth talking a little bit about the physical aspects, the emotional aspects, and how you can kind of evolve relationally in this time through technology, because it is so difficult to connect really face-to-face and in person.
Yeah, when people think about, grief, like Johnny, you just mentioned the grief, a lot of people don't think about this, like they think about grief like, okay, if I lost somebody due to COVID-19, or if I knew somebody was desperately ill, that makes sense why I would be experiencing grief. But really grief comes in whenever there's loss. And like Tony just mentioned, we've all lost the sense of routine. We've lost our sense of normalcy. We've lost our freedom in so many ways. So just like any other loss, whenever there's loss, there's always grief. And we're going to go through the stages of grief, just like you would in any other type of loss, like going through the loss of a divorce or loss due to death or any kind of a loss. Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about like what those stages of grief are and what they could look like?
Yeah, I think, so the first, we'll just talk really about the 5 stages of grief and kind of recognizing that, grief can be related to any loss. It could be a job, it could be, and right now, we're dealing with jobs, social connection, money, routine. We've lost our purpose. We're just kind of grieving all of that loss, and change is another way to look at loss. This change is a definite loss for the majority of us, if not all of us. So the steps are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And if you're looking at those stages, I think the denial in this instance is like, I can't believe this is happening. I actually, just said that to one of my coworkers. We're the only 2 in our office. And I was just like, this is kind of like an episode of or I feel like I'm in the Matrix movie. It's like just unbelievable. And though I know that it's happening, it's a challenge to, combat the reality of what's going on and what you really want. So the denial kind of comes into play there. And then, of course, you're angry about it because I'm upset. I'm a very social person, and this is killing me. It's really challenging. I can't give hugs. I can't get hugs. I'm a massage therapist. I'm not touching people. This is definitely an abnormal situation for me. And it does make me angry in some sense. And the problem here is there's really no one to be angry at. There's no specific person we can pinpoint the situation to. So that does make it difficult to process and deal with what's going on as well. And then bargaining is, the next step. And in this instance, it's probably more like, well, I can go do this and I can go do that and I shouldn't stay in. And we kind of figure out how we can actually get out in the world and engage instead of possibly following all the social, distancing guidelines. So I think that's how bargaining would apply to what's going on with us now. And then, of course, that's in the depression. I would add anxiety to that, as you said, Tori. These different feelings about not being able to manage these other things and dealing with our purpose and knowing where we're going and what we're doing. So I think depression definitely comes into that, feeling the loss and not having access to, and then where are we turning to right now? Like, are we going inward and thinking about all the negative stuff that's going on, and there's really no positive influence coming in unless we're accessing it again through technology? And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that later. And then finally is the acceptance, and in this instance, we kind of have to realize this is the new norm. We have to accept this. And in order for our nation, our communities, our local communities to really get through this, we have to recognize it and accept this is the new normal. The thing about the grief process, again, it can relate to anything, any type of loss, is that you may vacillate between these different 5 levels on any given level. It's not a linear thing. You can be angry one day, you could be dealing with acceptance the next, and then you go back to anger the next day. So one of the things in my practice when I'm doing my life coaching and stuff, I always talk to people about better out than in. So we're going to talk to you about some ways to get all that energy out, to get the negative talk, get out of your head, and make room for some positive stuff that can come in. So recognizing that this process, these emotions you're feeling, the difficulty you're having now is absolutely normal for everyone in this situation.
Well, and I think, for me in 2007, I lost my job. I lost my mom, my dad, and my job in 1 year.
Wow.
And I felt like I was in this crisis. And after several months, I just stopped. I stayed still for a few months. I was blessed I had some money, but I stayed still for a few months, and then I opened a company. Like the crisis back then, now I look, post 12 years, 13 years, I'm like, thank goodness, the rat race I was in corporate America, how that shifted. And maybe, John, you want to talk a little bit about that shift, or, how people do it.
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple points in there. One is that, like Tony was talking about, all the different stages of grief and how they're not linear. You bounce back and forth through them, and we see it right now. Like whether like in anger, we see people on social media. It's those nasty Republicans. It's the president's fault. It's the dumb Democrats. It's whether it's blaming a political party or blaming a doctor or an organization. That's anger. And that's part of the grieving process. There's the bargaining, all the what ifs. If only we had done this sooner, if only, that's the bargaining phase of grief. So we see it played out. You can't look at social media for more than a minute or two without seeing people in all the different aspects of the stages of grief. And I think it's helpful when we realize that that's what it is. They're just grieving. And just like, Tori, when you went through the losses that you went through, everybody that experienced those types of loss experiences it differently. And we don't all experience it the same way. So we got to give ourselves and each other a lot of grace going through this process. Just because somebody's at a different place, if they're angry or if they're asking all the questions, or some people are in the acceptance. Hey, I've moved on. I'm learning a new language. I picked up a new book. I'm doing all this stuff. That's great for them, but it may not be great for you. So we got to give ourselves a lot of grace. The other thing that you mentioned, Tori, is that when we've all experienced loss, and at some point we've all experienced grief. It's part of the human process. So if we haven't fully resolved past losses, whether that's the loss of a pet, a job, a divorce, whatever it is, this particular loss, even if you might not be personally impacted a lot by that, maybe you're still working, maybe it hasn't impacted you greatly financially, maybe nobody that you know is sick, but you may be really struggling with this emotionally. The anxiety might be high, the depression it may be because there's some unresolved grief and loss. And we see that a lot because there's no shortcut to the grieving process. So if you don't fully process grief, every particular loss just compounds one after another, and we can kind of get emotionally constipated to where we need to make sure we go back and we process thoroughly past losses in order to have full acceptance.
And I call that stacking. I don't know if that's the appropriate term for that, but
Exactly.
I call that stacking, and that's why we get triggered maybe easily. And I think one of the things that maybe you guys can help us understand, can you be in denial and acceptance at the same time? I mean,
Yes.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Again, when we're talking about grief not being a linear thing, you can have, that kind of confused, when you're like angry at somebody that you love, it's like, I love them, but I'm angry, you don't know what to do. And it's just to allow each emotion to be there. So you can be angry and in acceptance of what's happening. although it is a new norm, I'm certainly not happy about this. Yeah, I am not having a good time. But the difference is I'm angry, and being able to kind of be clear that there's really no one specific to be angry at. Like, I can just feel the emotion of anger. I'm frustrated. I'm anxious. I'm, missing my connections with people. And the acceptance part is that's actually okay. Considering what's happening, I can't stop this from happening directly. I can't snap my fingers and magically it goes away. So what I can do is recognize it and accept that I'm going to be angry, anxious, lost, confused, unsure, financially, everything, just challenged. So being able to just sit in the emotion, and most often just allow yourself to feel it and recognize what it is. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be in the bargaining phase. It's okay. All of it's okay.
And there may be different levels, almost like think of the layers of an onion. You might go through the stages. You might be like, I can't believe this is happening. Damn it. Why did they do something sooner? Oh, well, this really sucks. Oh, well, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. Well, what I just demonstrated in 30 seconds is all 5 stages of grief, right? You went, and you can go through that on a surface level. So you might get to acceptance at the surface level, but then go deeper and maybe be in denial at a deeper level. So,
well, that's what I think concerns me, right? We have a lot of families that have small children at home right now. I'm blessed that mine's a teenager and he's already considered himself for the most part. But I started listening to this audio of meditation and being positive, and honestly, it made me angry. So I started getting angry. My son's like, "Stop listening to that stuff. It's crazy. It's making you angry," because it's something that I guess I'm not trained well enough in yet, that I couldn't control my emotions of that frustration that I was feeling, that I can't get out and do what I want to do. So for people that don't have that awareness, I've had a lot of training to make myself aware, or I have a child that brings it and throws it in my face. But for people that don't have that and we're just reactive, how do we know when we're reactive, and how do we deal with that? And I know you guys are taking virtual patients right now. I believe that if anybody wants information, they can ask questions in chat, or they can reach out to your phone numbers on there. I want to make sure I mention that, and people can share this video as well for people that they know that are struggling. But some of us, we're not even aware of our behaviors.
Yeah, very true. And like you said, Troy, all of our staff, we have a team of 12 practitioners, psychologists, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, health coaches, physicians, naturopathic doctors. So all of us are available to do free consultations during this time. So they can call the number on Tony's background, and we're doing it via secure video links, phone conversations, and we are still open. We are an essential business, and we are still open for emergency appointments in office as well. And with that, I lost my train of thought of what you were asking about.
I think people having the tools to deal with and recognize when they're responding in a negative way, and maybe they don't have the tools to even identify when they're triggered or when they're responding.
Yeah. A lot of that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about being gracious. We have to be, when we're talking about relational self-care, stuck in the same home with the kids and the spouse or whatever, the biggest tip I have is be gracious. Be gracious with each other. Be great. Put a sign on the refrigerator, put a sign everywhere, just grace, extend grace. But that really goes to yourself, and what you were asking, Tori, about being gracious with ourselves. Because even though you mentioned like the meditation, you're listening to meditation, getting angry. Well, I saw something on Facebook. I remember somebody posted if you come out of this quarantine period without having learned a new language or developed a new skill, you have no excuses. You're just lazy. Well, damn it, that made me angry. Because in the moment, I get it. That was written from somebody that's in the acceptance phase, and that's logical. That makes sense. I get it up here, but in the moment, if you're in the anger phase or the depression, that's not what you want to hear. That feels like pressure. So as we go through the journey, we can take little steps, and there is some wisdom in the concept of fake it till you make it. Sometimes we do have to take small steps we don't want to get stuck in any one of the stages of grief. We don't want to be sitting here a year from now still blaming the politicians or blaming the doctors or still depressed and sitting in isolation. So sometimes we do have to take small steps, and it may be Maybe it's, I can't, I'm not going to run 5 miles today, but maybe I'm going to take a walk around the block. You know, maybe I can't do this meditation, but maybe I can just start my day thinking of one positive thought. You know, so we can take small steps, whether that's physical, relational. Maybe I can't do a Zoom support group, which would be a great thing, but we have lots of them around. But if that's not, you're not there yet, maybe you can just have a 5-minute phone call with a trusted friend or do a free consultation with one of our therapists.
Yeah, I started doing incantations when I'm walking, like, how can I be more patient? How can I help more people? How can I be more supportive? Trying to train my brain into how do I become better and less reactive? Yeah, I'm German and Irish, so.
Same here.
You know, so I think a gratitude journal, I mean, what do you guys think about a gratitude journal and looking at that every time you have that fear or that anger? I mean, our brains technically really aren't wired to have the fear and anger and grateful, right?
So yeah, that actually ties in. Linda Page is on. She's one of our networking partners. She actually asked, how can we deal with the uncertainty of not knowing when things will get back to normal? So yes, I think the gratitude journal would be good. And I think that, I know I've heard John say this numerous times, you have to focus on the things that we can control. You know, like I said earlier, I can't snap my fingers and bring us out of this. So what I can control is how I'm dealing with it, starting a gratitude journal, doing some incantations, focusing on what I can do for my health to keep me physically and emotionally and relationally connected as much as possible so that I stay healthy during this. Focus on some information and not overdoing it with the news. You know, when I listen to the news more than 3 times or even 3 times a day, it exhausts me. So I do kind of just at the end of the night to hear the update. I might do a little check-in in the morning. But finding ways to acknowledge what is good, what is positive, what is happening. It's hard to imagine that something positive is coming out of this, but you know, all the posts that I'm seeing about pollution in the world, you know, that might not directly affect this, but at the same time, that's kind of a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, it's taken something this crazy and difficult to make that happen. But again, we continue to focus on what's not working. It's going to add to our anxiety, it's going to add to our depression, and it's going to make it harder for us to pull out of that space when things do get back to normal. John?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that too. Like, that's a great point that Linda brought up, because when we think about going back to the concept of grieving, when sometimes we grieve a permanent loss, like death. You know, when we go to the funeral and the casket's closed, like there's a permanence to it, and it's as awful as that is. It's easier in some ways to get emotionally to get over a permanent loss like death or divorce or getting fired from a job, as opposed to like a chronic loss, like if you get diagnosed with a chronic health issue, or you're living with somebody that's has a physical or emotional handicap. That's kind of what we're in now, because this loss, we don't know when it's going to end, if it's going to end, how it's going to end. I mean, we know ultimately, yeah, it's going to end, but the acceptance stage of the grieving process for us is getting to, like you said, this is our new norm. Even though it's not a permanent norm, it is our new temporary norm. So we have to get to a place of, okay, this is reality. I don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be okay, but I can accept it, that this is my temporary. Sometimes just saying that, this is my new reality. And some of the things we can do is, like you were talking about, Tony, getting into that routine and focus on things that you can control. Having a new routine is really important. When we get focused with any kind of crisis, the human physiological responses that we've heard about, the fight, flight, freeze, you know, that's the response that we go into. And originally, you know, a few weeks ago, if you were a first responder, you're in the fight, but you're still in the front lines and you're fighting and you haven't even let it sink in. If you're a business person that got your business is either shut down or incredibly slow, you kind of went into this freeze mentality for a little bit, and you sat around kind of wondering, your brain's going wild for a little while, where now, okay, it's sinking in, we need to move to that new routine. We have to accept that this is my new temporary reality. So that routine means I gotta figure out, when do I get up? When do I go do my walk or do my gratitude journal or do my meditation or talk to my friends and family or do a support group or, you know, go on social media, all the things that we do, the school projects for the kids, getting into a schedule and a structure can be really helpful in that kind of environment.
Can you guys talk a little bit about pattern interrupters? So I walk almost every morning, and I tend to make myself go a different direction, and it makes my husband crazy because he likes to go the same direction. But I don't like to get into a routine per se, because for me, I feel like I lose control. Can you talk about different pattern interrupters that maybe people can utilize right now when they are in that negative space, on how they can try to shift that, maybe a tool tip or something?
Yeah, it really depends on each person, because some people, like you, like your husband, likes the routine, and it's for some people a sense of routine and going in the same direction on their walk every morning can be really helpful, can be really balancing. It can give them a sense of security. But for other people, it can get into a negative loop. We often see that with a kind of a pathway. We have a brain pathway. Like, you think about taking a path through the woods. If you walk the same path every day, it becomes a well-worn trail. And in our brain, we have the same thing. We have neural pathways. And if you think the same thought over and over again, it becomes not just a neural pathway, it becomes like a neural highway. And for some of us, it can be paved and downhill and has Vaseline on it, because everything, boom, something happens and we go to the, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm such a jerk. I can't, whatever, some kind of negative self-talk. And that can be a really, obviously, very destructive pattern. So we have to have those pattern interrupters, something that forces us to take a new path, coming up with a new mantra. And there's things that we can do, like mental exercises that we can do, brain balancing techniques, things that we can do to help create that new pathway. The first step in that process, and it's probably a little deeper than what we have time to go into now, but that would be if somebody can relate to this, if they have that negative pathway where they always think the same thought, that would be a great opportunity to schedule a free consultation with one of our therapists, because we can talk through some practical things that you can do. The first step is create the destination of the new path. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And then talk about some physical and emotional things you can do to help pave that new pathway, and let the grass and the weeds grow up over the old path.
And Tori, I can say for someone, I'm like you, like I hate, that's why I don't like treadmills in the gym. I cannot stand just staring out a window. So I think the focus on the fact that you're actually doing the exercise is more important than how you're doing it. As long as the routine could be doing an exercise for 20 minutes, whether it's walking, calisthenics at home, jumping rope, whatever. Because you sound like I need diversity. I have several routes to get home and get to work, and I really need that, because going the same routine for me drives me bananas. So that's really good that you mentioned that, because I think just doing the routine, whatever it is, but you can change up the things in the routine so that you still keep on a cycle of feeling productive and doing something.
Well, and I think right now, there's so much stress for some people, especially single parents or people that don't have any income from their jobs right now. I went through a phase probably 8 years ago. My son got very sick, was sleeping 18 hours a day. We thought he was dying for 3 years. And I couldn't even come up with a positive thought. And I got a book that was trying to teach me how to think of things I was grateful for. And I kid you not, I couldn't come up with anything I was grateful for. Now I had my health, I had my family, I had a home, I was financially okay, but I had gotten into that rut that literally put me in stage 4 adrenal failure. Yeah. And you guys talk a little bit about nutrition and the importance of shifting that mindset, because it will make you physically sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, before you do that, I do want to mention one thing, because I think someone asked us online, Tori, if it's okay, about people that are alone, like people that live alone, and how they're managing. As one of those people, as I said, it's really difficult for me. So I'm talking to Tal Tran, who's a friend, and asked this question, like weekends and being alone, she's feeling that it's probably really tough for them to imagine. So whether you're alone at home or not, or even if you had a big social life, what helps? So she did mention FaceTime calls. They may not be enough, but I have been doing that more with my sister. The video calls for me are really important. Seeing somebody, I feel better. Just talking on the phone is not going to work for me right now. But even simple things, like I have a friend that I watch a movie with every night. So they're home watching their movie. We call each other. We time the movie at the right time. And then when we get done, we kind of have a conversation about the movie. So to answer your question, Tal, if you're still watching, we really can't control that we can't be social right now. What we can control is finding new and interesting ways to reach out to people. FaceTime, Skype, Zoom meetings, free classes online. I started looking at some free drawing classes and things like that to get my mind going, to kind of evolve in this moment, to take up some old hobbies that we used to be into. If you're living alone, like clean up your house, start organizing and throwing things out, which I've been kind of sorting through things I don't need. So those are some examples, Tal, but also remember that there's only so much you can do in the situation, and we have to recognize if we're not okay with it, just that's fine if we're upset about it. And we also at the same time have to recognize this is where we are and what we're dealing with. So you just put your creative artist hat on and just find the craziest way to do it and make it happen.
And keep in mind that when we use the term social distancing, obviously it's become really popular. I'm not a big fan of the term. I think what would be a better term would be physical distancing. Really, that's what we're really trying to do is physical distancing. Because I think when we think of social, we are social creatures. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter. We are still designed and created for relationship and connection. So finding, you just keep in mind that physical distancing doesn't necessarily equate to emotional distancing. We have to come up with, like Tony said, really creative ways to engage deeper emotionally. And it's certainly easier to do when you're in the physical presence of somebody, but over the phone or through Zoom or through FaceTime, you may have to force yourself to go a little bit deeper, be a little more vulnerable with somebody you trust. Go have a deeper conversation. Get out that, Google deep questions to ask your spouse or ask a friend, and just get to know somebody a little bit better, because it'll make up for some of that void.
And people may not be free, like you for up to an hour, and it doesn't cost anything. If you want to get on Zoom and set up an account, and I have a group that meets every Thursday now, and it's just different people that I know that I've brought together, and I think 20 people are all getting to know each other that had never met each other. I knew them. So do whatever you have to have that, even though this isn't the same as being physically together, it's better than not communicating at all.
Right. Very true.
And then Tori, I know you were asking about the kind of from a nutritional standpoint and what the impact that this can have on your immune system. And we know that stress takes a huge toll on our immune system. There are so many diseases. In fact, a huge percentage of diseases are not necessarily caused by stress. Some of them are actually caused by stress, but almost every disease can be exacerbated by stress. Okay, so it is really critical that we keep our stress intact by doing some of these, by engaging, connecting with people, the physical stuff, the exercise, the walks, taking little steps along the journey. But things that we can do practically to keep our immune system strong. The biggest thing is our diet, is our food. So yeah, we need to get some exercise. We need to get some sunlight. But we know that every fruit and vegetable out there, there are literally thousands and thousands of ingredients in every fruit or vegetable. An apple, for example, the scientists have already discovered there's over 10,000 different ingredients in an apple, 30,000 in a cranberry. Every piece of fruit or vegetable has got, when I say ingredients, the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, all these enzymes, all these what we call phytonutrients, these plant-based ingredients that God or Mother Nature, whatever your belief is, put in fruits and vegetables and they all work in synergy. They all work together to they're power packed to give our body the most bang for the buck. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of supplements. I'm not against supplements, but most supplements are not regulated, and there's not a lot of research on most supplements. Where we really want to get our nutrition from food. Food is, our body knows what to do with food. It's bioavailable. That means it gets into your bloodstream. So the more fruits and vegetables that we can eat, all adults, if you go to the myfoodpyramid.gov, all adults are somewhere, the recommendation is somewhere between 9 and 13 servings a day. Wow, that's a lot of fruits and vegetables. But if we can eat the recommended servings of fruits and vegetables, we reduce our risk of cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, the list goes on and on, by more than 50%. So we can reduce a whole lot of disease and keep our immune system strong. One nutritional product that I like, that I've been taking for over 15 years, is something called Juice Plus. It's actually, it looks like a vitamin, it looks like a supplement because it's in a capsule, but it's actually regulated by the FDA. It has a nutrition facts label on it. In other words, it's regulated as raw produce. It's not a supplement or a vitamin. It's just concentrated fruits, vegetables, and berries that have been juiced and then dehydrated. They do it in an oxygen-free environment, so all the enzymes are still active, and it's still regulated as raw produce. And they just take out the water and the sugar, so it just concentrates like Jetson food and concentrated fruits and vegetables. The thing that I love about it, besides the fact that it's fruits and vegetables, besides the fact that it's regulated by the FDA, it is by far the most researched nutritional product in history. And that's a pretty bold claim. But if you have a smartphone, if you go to Siri or Google and say, hey, what's the most researched nutritional product in history? Your smartphone will tell you Juice Plus. And that's a great way of just getting more information or getting more concentrated fruits and vegetables into your diet. I know, Tony, you've been on it for quite a while. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the impact that Juice Plus has made for you?
So, I think when we talk about supplements, that was kind of really clear. It's very different. It's actually a food product. So for me, I had some inflammation issues, and I know that the antioxidants were really the things that I needed. So I started taking Juice Plus many years ago, and I kind of stay on it. I don't really get sick. I don't really worry about a lot. I still eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, so I don't profess that this is like the only thing I eat. It just kind of helps me bridge the gap between what I'm eating and what I should be eating. Because as a male at 50, I'm in the 13 servings a day. And I'm sure Tori, and everybody listening, when we're working, we have no time to prepare fruits and vegetables 13 times a day. So that's how it's been beneficial for me, really. And I think that, go ahead, Tori.
I think we find that when we're more nutritionally sound, we're not craving the boxed food.
Right. And that's what I was going to talk about. Like, the one thing I was going to lead right into that. So it's awesome you said that. Is I went shopping like maybe right before we had to go on lockdown. I bought animal crackers. I bought vanilla wafers. These are things I never buy. So I think that comfort food, because of what's going on, is really important. Allow yourself to recognize that's probably going to happen. You're probably going to eat something you have not eaten in 20 years. Maybe it's marshmallows. Maybe it's snowballs. We know it's not good for us. So if we acknowledge, though, that we are in this place of needing comfort food, and it can help us make the right choices. So if you're going to eat those things, grace, as John said, don't beat yourself up, because most people, the comfort food comes in when we're feeling out of control, like we have no purpose, our direction has changed, we're unsure. And that's when the cravings for the comfort food, which is usually boxed food and a lot of carbs, which, turn into sugars, and which, turn into fat if we don't work out and we're doing less activity. So what's important is to recognize that you're probably going to have that reaction. And then actually, I never do this, but I've been doing it now. I literally write a list now, and I don't buy anything that isn't on my list, which is a challenge for me, because I just kind of walk through the store and I'm like, oh, I need this, I need that. And that's what led me to, not only did I have vanilla wafers and animal crackers, I also bought ice cream. So it was just a lot of food. I bought, what are those, the gummies, the Sour Patch Kids. I bought Junior Mints. These are things I don't eat on a regular. But I recognized I was just in this unsure mode. I was a little scared about what was going on. But I allowed myself to eat it. I went through it. And this week, the last couple of weeks, it's been a routine of writing down a list and focusing on exactly what's on my list. And if it's not on my list, I walk out. I just try really hard not to purchase it.
So I've eaten a ton of sugar, lots of
Yay.
Cheetos, but I think the one thing that concerns me more than anything is alcohol. So, I've had a couple drinks here and there. I drink. I don't have an issue with drinking, but I can tell you that there's days I've gotten up at 10 o'clock and I'm like, that looks good. Now I don't do it, but there are people that probably are out there and they're consuming alcohol or something because they're feeling so much stress. And I'm so grateful that you guys are giving consultations right now, complimentary, that people can pick up the phone and call, because there's children in these households, or there's just, you don't know what you're going to do if you overuse anything. And I agree with the Grace. I think it's really important But can you speak to the people that at 10 a.m. are actually taking that drink and they feel overwhelmed? You know, again, I know that they can call you, but can you give them a couple bits of advice on what can they do to maybe overcome that craving of trying to escape?
Yeah.
I'll just jump in and then I'll let John finish. The little bit I want to add right now is I think I'll confirm what I believe John said is the routine. And then also the grace, like being okay. If you're using anything to hide your feelings and emotions, that's when it becomes a challenge. So the key thing for everybody would be, and John will wrap up with what he recommends. I think the key thing for anyone right now, whether it's eating, whether it's anger, whether it's smoking, whether it's alcohol, at this time, if you're using it, to hide or cover up the fear, the denial, the anger, the frustration, then that's something you want to look at. If you're trying to hide it and push it down, that is a definite signal, or it should alert you to seek some outsource for some help. John?
Yeah, I just agree with everything that's said. Unfortunately, we are seeing a huge impact on mental health across the country, like everything from even the number of calls to the suicide hotline, prevention hotline has more than tripled in the last few weeks. Addictions, depression, anxiety are on the significant uptick, and we are going to see an increase. Like you guys both mentioned, that when we're using something to hide our negative emotions, our uncomfortable emotions, that triggers the addictive cycle. It triggers more shame and secrecy, and then it triggers like fantasy behaviors. If I only drink, if I only have that box of Cheetos, if I only smoke that whatever, use that drug, I'll feel better. And then that leads to ritual behaviors and acting out. And then we have more shame, more secrets, and that addictive cycle can continue. If anybody's in that in any phase, maybe they're not fully in an addiction, or maybe you are, maybe you're toying on the edges. Maybe you find yourself tempted to drink at 10 a.m. or tempted to use a drug that you've never used before, or overuse something that's prescribed. There's a huge number of support groups. I mean, first of all, reach out. Secrecy is the fuel to shame, and shame is the fuel for every addictive behavior. Okay, so keeping things in the light. If you have a trusted friend, a counselor, a therapist, a support group, I'll be vulnerable. I've struggled with an addiction most of my life, and I still attend a support group. Where I work on my stuff in order to stay strong, to be able to help other people through their stuff. There are online support groups that go on right now. I was on one yesterday. So there's all kinds of opportunities for people to get the help. Don't let things build up. And if you're finding yourself not keeping it a secret from everybody, that's a red flag.
So if you guys can share maybe a couple of those support groups and comments at some point. So if somebody wants to reference back to that, I think that would be helpful, because, you know, no matter how overwhelming anything feels at any given time, it'll pass. And I think if you have somebody that can help walk you through rationally the emotions, then sometimes it's easier to process that. But when we feel completely overwhelmed, when I was, you know, I lost my mom, my dad, my job, and I had 2 homes that I opted to short sell. I mean, I felt so overwhelmed at that time that I didn't want to answer my phone. I didn't want to open my mail. And there's going to be people that are going through that right now. And there's great attorneys out there that can help people through this process, that you can stay. I had somebody that 10 years ago came to me and said, Tori, you have to sell my home. I'm in foreclosure. They're going to come put yellow tape around my home, which they don't do. And I went and I met with that individual, and he was a newscaster on TV, had lost his job. Wife made about $12,000 a year. They had an autistic child. They had spent all their savings paying their mortgage, and now they were out of money. And they felt like they were in this crisis that, hey, you have to sell my home. And when I met with them, I was like, wait, if I sell your home, you're going to be homeless. Your credit's messed up. You don't have savings. There's nowhere for you to go. The worst thing you could do right now is sell your home. Let's connect you with trusted advisors that I had in my circle, and post 12 years later, they're living in Heathrow for $1,300 a month. They don't care if they ever pay their mortgage off, right? It's cheaper than renting. And he got a job, and they've gotten their world back in order. But had I allowed them to sell their home at that point in time, they probably would have ended up in a very bad place. So my point to that story is that, you know, it may not be a home, it may be a job, it may be a dissension within the family, children that are separated because of divorce or separations. There's always rational conversations with professionals that have experience that can help you. And that's why I'm so grateful for Tony and John to take their time, and they're going to take their time every week now for a while to give some sound advice. And, you know, they can call you. You know, what else do you guys want to share with people today? And thank you so much for being available for our community.
Absolutely, you're very welcome, and I'm glad everybody's joining in. So I'm going to put a quick website if you want. It's really easy, and there's a lot of support groups they can find to this. It's I can't remember the acronym. It's the National Association of it's NAMI, but John could probably clear about what it is. It's www.nami.org. So it's www.nami.org. And that has a lot of resources and a lot of support groups you can find, and that would be probably helpful. Right now, too, I know that one of our counselors, DJ, has written a couple great blogs on our website on how to deal with some of the stress of COVID, and then 5 ways to maintain social connection while we're all isolated or separated physically. And those can be found on our website, which is www.totalhealthguidance.com/blog, and you can check some of those articles out. Or blog articles there might give you a little bit of some ideas on what to do, you know, during this time when we have to be physically separate from each other. And then one other thing too, I think when you were talking, Tori, I was thinking about like the negative concept in mind that comes into these situations, losing our house, losing our job, losing our car. It really is overwhelming. And I don't know that we allow ourselves to feel overwhelmed. So I think the point you made was really important, to definitely reach out and find resources, especially when you feel that emotion coming in. I don't know what I'm going to do about a job. Start looking for work. There are still some places hiring. I mean, I know it's a challenging time right now, but even making the effort for me, has been able to cut down some of that negative energy and the worry. I take action for myself to do things, and I really push hard because it's super difficult. You know, it's like, oh, I just want to lay on the couch. And then I realized if I do lay on the couch, that's fine, but it also isn't going to change the fact that I'm worried about my mortgage or my finances or whatever. So I'm going to try to do something. I'm not going to look at my finances and say, oh my God, I don't have the money. I'm going to go, how can I make money? Is there any possibility to find a job at this time? Maybe it's not, you know, I mean, my niece just got a job in Georgia, so there's still work to be had. It might not be in the profession you're in, but I think, you know, we talk about this a lot, is if we focus on the negative, we're going to kind of live there. And it is easy to do that because this is a stressful time. Like nothing positive is really coming through for most people. So if we can turn our head away from that for a moment and just take whatever minor step it is, and don't judge how far or how deep you go, just take a step forward and find something positive to do for yourself or for your loved ones, you know, to keep your brain off of the negative stuff that's kind of just right there hiding over your shoulder, right?
Yeah, and I think just in closing for me, the NAMI website, that's the National Alliance for Mental Illness, has a lot of great resources, but also our staff. You feel free to we want to be available. We have male counselors, female counselors, young, old, English, Spanish, Portuguese speaking. So a lot of diversity, every different background. And we can help you with not just the national support groups, but there are local support groups right here in the Orlando area or anywhere you may be watching this, and we can help connect you to. There are support groups obviously for drugs and alcohol. There are support groups for people that overeat or use sex or porn to medicate, or gambling, or you name the issue. There's support groups for it. There are faith-based support groups for different backgrounds. There's no shortage of services out there. So reach out to somebody. We do consultations, not just in Florida, but nationwide. So for people that are watching this outside of Florida, we can do consultations for anywhere in the country and provide you with some teletherapy along the way. So I do hope you've learned something. Don't get overwhelmed with all the different things we talked about. Pick one or two. Pick one or two things. Maybe just one little nugget that stood out, and see if you can implement that one thing. Share this with a friend, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you next Thursday at the same time at 12 o'clock.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Tori.
And in closing, just know where your focus goes, your energy is going to flow. So, you know, go outside. One thing I do, I know it's a little crazy, but I'll go watch the ants. If you look at the ants and you see what they can carry and what they can accomplish, you can too. So, guys, thank you so much. I look forward to this again next week. And if we can just touch one life, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Tori. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.